Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, where President Biden stands in his own party after a tough first debate, Axios correspondent Alex Thompson reports.
The only one that can get out of this race is Joe Biden. The party cannot force him off the ballot. He won the primary.
The state of fundraising, the Democratic Party, and a weekend of presidential press.
It was pre-planned, I swear. By the way, that part's true because they were there to take a picture with Andy Leibovitz.
And a Supreme Court decision that could undercut federal agency authority. Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Gottlieb on overturning Chevron.
You're going to have to go back to Congress in many cases, get explicit authority if you want to extend the agency's jurisdiction into a new product area.
Those stories, plus it's a busy week for elections around the world and for summer movies.
I have to say, I can't wait to see that one, too.
It's Monday, July 1st, 2024. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. And Andrew, it's nice to have you back in studio.
It's nice to see you all together.
It's good to see you.
Traveling after a crazy week.
Traveling
week.
Was crazy.
In many, many ways.
Could get crazier today at 10 a.m.
We'll see.
Wait, what's 10 a.m.?
Scotus.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, I thought you were talking just something potentially
Scotus.
happening.
Like what?
Just what the scuttlebutt has been since the debate.
I have no
and where
idea.
things
You know
go
what?
along these
I have no
lines.
idea. I don't know what to think, I don't know what they decided. I see people. We have Alex Thompson on, who's been out in front of a lot of stuff.
You wrote a big story over the weekend.
And depending on who you speak to, you can get, they're not all on the same page. Everybody's trying to deal with a very difficult decision, and who knows?
A decision that's going to be made by one or two people, too.
Déterminant surtout pour donner à Jordan Bardella une majorité absolue à l'Assemblée nationale. Pour lancer.
Okay, let's talk about what's happening in France, though, because over the weekend, the French stock market now gaining ground. Just this morning, the index rising by more than 2% at one point in early trading after the far-right National Rally Party winning the first round of parliamentary elections in France, raising the expectations of a hung parliament. This is going to put Marine Le Pen's party one step closer to winning the National Assembly, and it would put it on track to gain a significant amount of seats when voters return to the ballot box on July 7th. President Macron's party came in third. If the National Rally Party wins a majority in the Assembly, Macron would face the possibility of sharing power with the far-right party. Macron's presidential term ending in 2027, and he said he won't resign. So then there's a big question of just how well this entire situation could get managed, whether he made a mistake effectively by pushing for the snap election as quickly as he did. Apparently, though, if you read some of the material over the weekend, his team thought that if you didn't do it now, you actually would 100% lose in September or October, just because of the way things were directionally going for the National Rally Party.
For him, he can actually hold on to power. It just washes out everybody else in his power and means his wings are going to be clipped in terms of what he can do.
No way to run a country, though, the power sharing. And when we look at it, don't we think, as crazy as things are here?
Well, we have power sharing.
Sort of. Nothing like that. You don't have, the far left's got to share power with the far right, and no one really has any.
I don't know if I'd be trumpeting how great it is to have a two-party system at this point.
Well,
look at how you wind
And then
up with.
anything they do there is all under the EU anyway, so they don't even have any power anyway. It's a mess. It's a hodgepodge. Nothing is. You can see how effective it is. Not very.
Well, and then you have by the way, because we were just talking about it before the broadcast, we're all headed to the Olympics. The entire world is going to be focused on France.
Right.
And so the question is, what kind of image does this portray to the world? Is this a good situation? Is this a bad situation?
But
there's going to be an overhang. All the conversations we're going to have, I imagine, are going to have something to do with this.
But you can tie it together to the entire globe, what's happening with progressive politics and the trouble that you're in when you look at Canada, when you look at the United States, when you look at France.
Can't we just focus on the sport and the human achievement of trying to do things that have never been done before? Can't we?
Yes,
Can't we just put this aside for
That's the hope. That's the plan. That's what sports is supposed to do.
Focus on.
There was a gymnast from Oradell, New Jersey, which is
There you go.
right next door,
Right
who
here.
just qualified for the team last night. I'm very excited about that. I'm in Oradell every day.
Can you right now make a pledge that we're going to just come together on the achievements of humans and just to go that extra
You promise me
I'm
that
promising you that.
when Jill Biden is in the audience over there.
Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Jill or Joe? Who did you say?
Jill. I said Jill Biden. Jill.
I don't even want to talk about that today. I have no idea.
Right. You don't.
I have no.
Go for it.
Oh, do you know how you stand on this?
I think I do, but
You do?
when we
You want a different person?
why don't we go
All
to
right,
where
let's
we
turn
are?
to politics here at home and the fallout from last week's debate. President Biden's campaign spending the weekend in damage control mode. NBC News reporting that the Biden campaign held some tense conversations with Democratic officials and donors yesterday and pushing back against suggestions that the president step down from the race, stressing the president has no plans to do so. Sources also telling NBC during a pre-planned trip to Camp David with his family, and they kept saying it was pre-planned, I swear. Biden was told by kids and grandkids to stay in the race and, in their words, keep fighting.
But that part is, by the way,
despite
that part's true because they were there to take a picture with Andy Leibovitz.
Right, I know.
Take this portrait.
We're going to have more of Biden's fundraising efforts since the Thursday debate later in the hour, but I thought Carville
said it.
Well, but the way he said it, something that can't continue
Won't.
doesn't, or won't.
It's like quoting an economist.
Right. I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know.
The other thing, though, is it is very possible that you take this position publicly while you're
That's what I
trying to
mean.
sort out
Yeah.
what you're
I
going
know.
to do, and not just
You
what
would
you're
have
going
to,
do.
until there's a decision
There's going to
made,
be
you
an.
have to.
I think ultimately, if he steps away, that they're going to have to pre-wire effectively who's going to be the candidate. It's
know,
not going to be. I mean, it might turn into some kind of
I
open
don't know if
warfare
it's
and
good.
open convention, but
I think it.
I think the effort is going to be.
Right.
He's not going to want to step
Dana,
away
you-
unless he's pre-wired all the other pieces.
You're probably
before that.
uncomfortable talking about the way what I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks. The Democrats painted themselves into a corner. It's the lead.
100%.
But it's the op-ed of the Journal today. The DEI pick of Kamala Harris, because he said I'm gonna pick a woman no matter what, and she's less popular than him. All this. If there was a really great VP that everyone could get behind, it's just not, and so it makes us. You can't pass her over. You can't pick her. I mean, it's like the worst catch-22 mess I've ever seen.
Apparently, if
that-
both
that
of them, if
Democrats
neither
have-
of them are on the ticket, apparently, I think campaign finance rules would say that you would not automatically get the hundreds of millions of dollars that
that
the
too.
Democratic Party.
People are pushing Gretchen
does.
Whitmer at this
Whitmer.
point.
The thing that I can't figure out, and it was the thing we talked about on Friday that I still don't know, is all of the people who said, you know what, I'm really not very happy with Trump. I didn't, they didn't
You
love.
want him to
wanting
go-
vote.
you
No,
want-
my question is, I'm not convinced fundamentally that if you put some other person in this role, that
They
all
might
of a
go
sudden
there.
everybody flips over there. You think they do?
Some,
Some? Like a lot?
Depends on who the person is.
I think.
But that's the question.
I was badgering you last week to take the pledge. I said, look, Ackman says everybody should rally around.
Right, but the question is, his original supposition was that
may
he wanted
not
a
be
third.
there. He may not be there if it's someone that he'd really like from.
But the question is then, was this all just a excuse to go to
When
Trump
is that-
anyway?
yeah,
Do you see what I'm saying?
A little
I'm not
bit.
so sure that you're going to switch your positions.
I
don't think-
I haven't sorted out my positions yet.
You haven't?
No.
I thought
when I
everyone was
walk into
supposed to
that
come
booth, when I walk in that booth and the curtains come around me, that's when I know. Okay.
Look, I think
Moving
Brian
on.
Sullivan brought up a very good point.
now
He
you're
actually put out a
gaslighting
post on
everybody.
X. He put out a post on X and just said, "This is such an exceptional country. We have so many exceptional."
Yeah, we could be
people in it."
France.
How do you wind up with a two-party system that this is how things get frozen in place?
But I hate to be cynical, but sometimes you don't get the leader you want, you get the leader you deserve.
Fair point.
Apple's AI plans go beyond integrating its new Apple Intelligence technology in the iPhone, iPad, and Mac. Bloomberg now reporting tech giant is also working to bring these features to the Vision Pro headset. Apple's biggest challenge is redesigning how the features will look in mixed reality. Apple also changing how it demos the Vision Pro in stores, allowing potential buyers to view their personal media, which may make it more attractive because once you're in there and you can see pictures of yourself and your family, you sort of do an ooh-ah that's at a different level than sometimes some of the other stuff.
One of these days, maybe.
One of these days.
Put one of those.
You know what I just bought?
You're waiting for version 3.
No, you know what I just bought?
What'd you buy?
The Ray-Ban Meta glasses.
They're great.
I tried them on from somebody else, and I was so impressed. It's the
I've got
first
a
time
pair.
I've ever wanted one of these things. They talk right into your head. It's really cool.
That's all I need. I hear voices now. That's the problem.
Tease will be next.
Coming up, fallout from the first presidential debate continues. CNBC's Megan Cassella is on the ground with sourcing from Joe Biden's fundraisers all weekend.
When I spoke with people on Thursday, the mood was one of major alarm, calling the debate a disaster, saying there had to be something done to force him out. By Sunday, that had really calmed down.
And Axios reporter Alex Thompson, who spent the last few days reporting on the drama among Democrats.
There are tens of millions of people in this country that would still vote for Joe Biden at 110 over Donald Trump.
Much more Squawk Pod is still ahead. You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
Here's Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. We're going to talk some politics right now in the post-debate fundraising blitz that took place over the weekend. Megan Cassella joins us now with the latest. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Andrew. So the Biden campaign spent the weekend looking to shore up confidence among its supporters after that debate. They'd been alarmed by Thursday night's debate, and the Biden campaign is really pointing to its fundraising. It says the campaign raised $33 million from Thursday through Saturday, with most of that, about $26 million, coming from small dollar donors. They say Thursday and Friday were their best ever days for grassroots fundraising, which the campaign says shows the voters are still with them. But Biden also needs the wealthy donors. He had 3 big fundraisers this weekend, and I spoke with attendees who told me they were reassured by how the president seemed at those events. One described the mood in the Hamptons as one of, quote, concerned enthusiasm, while another said people in New York were resolved to do even more to help Biden win after Thursday. A third source told me the debate was a, quote, cold shower shock for Democrats about the state of the race, making them more engaged, in part because they're now more frightened about the potential outcome than they were on Thursday. So the emerging consensus really seems to be that while, yes, there's a lot of frustration that the party is in this position, they're standing by their candidate. And the upshot really is that if you were supporting Biden because you were anti-Trump, after that debate, you're still anti-Trump. Andrew?
Real quick, Megan, there's also been reports, though, that a number of big donors have talked about putting together a separate fund, in fact, that would be dedicated only if another nominee were to emerge, and that money would not be made available to the president. What do you think of that?
I think there's a little bit of bulletproofing going on, right? That, some candidates are trying to raise more just in case they need it. But the upshot from the folks that I talked to was that the calls were really dying down for President Biden to resign. When I spoke with people on Thursday, the mood was one of major alarm, calling the debate a disaster, saying there had to be something done to force him out. By Sunday, that had really calmed down among the same people. So I think, yes, that sentiment is out there. One thing that we did see over the weekend, or it was on Friday, was LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman came out with a long email laying out 5 points as to why he thought that shouldn't happen. It was a bad idea. And people are really sort of coalescing behind that from the people I talked to of just, it's up to President Biden and his family. And if they don't make that decision, we're still going to support him no matter what, because at the end of the day, this is Trump versus Biden.
We got to thank you. I got to tell you, a number of the people that I spoke to, they may be in the position you're describing, but it's not because they want to be. It's because they think he's going to refuse to actually step down, and therefore that they think this is sort of a reality that they have to accept.
It's easier if he doesn't for everything, but it may not be. Let's talk about this with someone who's been all over the story over the weekend. Axios National, Alex Thompson is going to join us right now. Oh, my God. Alex, thank you for joining us this morning. Every time I think we should talk about it, I'm ready to look down at my screen and see something citing 6 unnamed individuals who requested anonymity, and they're going to come out and say something, and I'm ready for anything at any given time. It's such a fluid situation right now. We heard, oh yeah, the move is afoot to find somebody else. We've heard that, and then we've also heard that the wagons are circling, and it'd be so difficult, and there's no heir apparent that's totally obvious either, Alex. What do you expect to happen? What's as of, what time is it? As of 6:40, what do you know, a.m., East Coast time?
Well, both things can be true, that some people are already scouring to see if there can be a replacement, and also the wagons are circling around Joe Biden. You basically saw Joe Biden's family really take the wheel over the weekend. He went to Camp David for a pre-scheduled shoot with Annie Leibovitz, which I can tell you did not go over great with a lot of very concerned Democrats who felt that the Bidens were not reading the room. That also included the First Lady on the cover of Vogue this month, which just dropped this morning. That being said, the only one that can get out of this race is Joe Biden. The party cannot force him off the ballot. He won the primary. This is a one-person decision. And the fact is that a lot of donors, a lot of Democrats, a lot of White House staff are both simultaneously sad because of how this could affect the election, but also feel really angry right now because they feel like they've been gaslit. You know, they could see Joe Biden was struggling in public forums the last 6 months especially, but also over the last year. And basically we're confronted by eye rolls and people in the White House being like, he's as sharp as ever. Yeah, maybe he has some physical frailties, but he's fine. The fact of the matter is that the debate undermined that, and now has even people in the White House questioning not just about whether or not he can win this election, but whether or not he should actually be president in 2029, which is what he's running to do.
It's an unholy alliance between those people who I don't, that's what they have to do, I think. They didn't really have much choice than to try to protect him and to keep him out of, as much as possible, to present him in the best light they could. Now, the mainstream media, I don't know, they're just in the tank, and I don't understand how they defend themselves after this.
Well, I think you've seen a huge shift in the mainstream media since Thursday's debate.
It's kind of sad,
in
though.
Part
They pull the rug out from under him. Just pull the rug out from under him when they no longer need him and don't think he's useful to their cause anymore. It's all just, I guess it's politics and human nature.
Well, actually, to your human nature point, I actually think part of this is that reporters feel lied to, too. I mean, that's like what the main reaction. And I've had this experience, too, as I've reported on Biden's age several times over the last year. And the White House has issued denials, has gaslit, has deflected, has not told the truth, not only just to reporters, but sometimes actually to themselves. I think there's a little bit of denialism happening within the White House among some of his top aides in addition to this.
They're now blaming the media. I mean, I saw that they're saying if there's any drop in the polls, it's because the media is exaggerating this. I mean,
that's what they said all along, though. Yeah.
I mean, it is extraordinary because just 2 weeks ago, you'll remember the Wall Street Journal had that big story that had behind the scenes Biden is slipping, and they basically, in all but essence, called it fake news. Right. And now they're saying it again. So
right, they had 30 sources, and people in the media, Brian Stelter, people like that, calling it poorly sourced, just whatever it takes from the White House, just almost repeating verbatim what the White House told him to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Journal could have avoided some of that pushback if they had not just had Republicans on the record. That sort of gave the White House an easy out. But the truth is that the Journal's reporting has basically been borne out by what everyone saw on stage, that Biden has been slipping. Now, he can still win this race because the fact of the matter is that there are tens of millions of people in this country that would still vote for Joe Biden at 110 over Donald Trump. Right. And you actually saw that in some of the flash polls afterward. 33% of people still thought Joe Biden won the debate. Now, that is higher than what Barack Obama had after his disastrous debate against Mitt Romney in 2012. So it sort of shows that political polarization still gives him a chance.
The CBS poll yesterday showed that nearly 75% of Americans thought he was too old to hold office.
I mean, it is very difficult to win a presidential race if that is the stat you're working against. And, that might be the mechanism. It's going to be really tricky because it's July 4th weekend. It's unclear when we are going to get the next series of really high quality polling. And that could really shift the narrative here. If you see a complete collapse of 5 to 10 points, which I think is within the realm of possibility, you could start seeing donors flee in mass. And then what does the rest of the party do?
Alex, I got two questions for you. One is, you wrote a piece over the weekend that got a lot of attention just about what was known inside the White House, what wasn't known inside the White House, how many people were in this sort of inner circle that might have known the true state and condition of the president relative to maybe the way this was described to the public. Can you just talk about not just the piece itself, but also I'm very curious what the reaction was to that?
Yeah, so basically the piece was that the core inner circle of this White House, which is about a dozen to 20 people, have really cordoned off the president since day one. And that is what has led to the shock factor within the White House. The fact is that a lot of White House aides watching the debate on Thursday night had no idea that this sort of side of Joe Biden existed. And part of that is because they really had intermittent access. And, occasionally they would see a bit of a senior moment. He would forget that he had, called the mom of a certain lawmaker a few weeks ago. And then, he'd be like, oh, yeah. And people just sort of brushed it off as like, oh, it's a brain fart. Anyone could do it. Now, what it appears to be is that was a more consistent behavior.
How do we know if they didn't know? How did everybody in the world know if they didn't know? It's like, don't believe your eyes. What you got one more? Because I want to ask him something.
Well, no. The second related question to this, though, is clearly it appears that Jill Biden, not Joe, but Jill Biden is the prime mover. I don't know if you believe that she is the prime mover, but there seems to be a view inside the party and among some very senior people I know that she's going to be the prime mover on terms of any decision that gets made. So the question is, where are the pressure points around her and her perspective, and also to the extent that they would pick a replacement if they did, how they would have to pre-wire that or want to pre-wire it.
Let me just add to that, throw in Joe Biden's sister, because I've seen reports that she's been not on board for a year, and she supposedly has a lot of influence. That puts her in direct opposition with the First Lady, does it?
Okay, so a few parts to that. So Jill Biden is the most important person in this coming month.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lie!
You saw her take the wheel. I mean, you saw her do that rally right after the debate, praising Joe Biden for answering every question. And then you also saw her really introduce him in a pretty fiery rally. I can also tell you in those fundraisers over the weekend, people there were struck not just by the fact that Joe Biden was still talking on a teleprompter, but by how much Jill Biden spoke at those fundraisers. In some cases, it seemed to be about half the time. And in terms of the pressure points around her, I'd say the most important person and perhaps one of the most powerful people really in the country is someone who's not very well known, is Anthony Bernal, who has been with her since 2008, is incredibly influential, not just in the First Lady's office, but throughout the White House and the administration. And it's sort of in some ways, the loyalty czar of the family. And so I think that's going to be, those are the main people that are really influential.
Right. Alex, what kind of, just to the last piece of the last thing I asked you, what kind of phone calls have you gotten from the White House or others around him since you put out that report?
It's interesting. In terms of the official White House comms, nothing really. But in terms of other White House people, I think there's been, honestly, it ranges from anger to being sad. And there's deep anger among many people in the White House of now being put in this position where they might not only lose the election, but this could also affect their own careers, their own legacy. And there's also fear that Joe Biden, who's lived really an extraordinary life in public service, that his own legacy could be permanently scarred by this. It could be the first line in his obituary if Trump were to win.
Right. Hunter, we didn't mention Hunter. Hunter said that his father's the smartest guy he knows, and his father said he's the smartest guy that he knows. It's nice, back and forth thing. Thanks, Alex.
Next on Squawk Pod, the Supreme Court has overturned the Chevron doctrine, a precedent of lower courts deferring to federal agencies in cases that rely on agency expertise. Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Gottlieb explains the impact for the agency he once ran.
Laboratory-developed tests or certain food safety rules. I think those are the areas where the agency's authority now is going to be more ambiguous. They're going to be challenged.
Plus, it's summer movie season. We're back right after this. This is Squawk Pod.
Up and Andrew, Q.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernan and Becky Quick.
Some positive news from the box office, which is pretty rare these days. Disney's Inside Out 2 has crossed the $1 billion mark at the worldwide box office in less than 3 weeks of its release, reaching that level in the fastest time of any animated film in history. The film is the highest-grossing movie of the year and the only one to cross $1 billion so far in 2024. You saw that.
Loved it.
Andrew's a buyer.
I'm a buyer. I think actually better than the first one, by the way.
Oh, wait. Got to talk about this next one. Paramount's
Sing,
A Quiet Place.
Sing, sing.
Day
Coleman
one.
Domingo.
Took
Sing,
in $53 million at the box office. That's the prequel to the Quiet Place franchise. It was only expected to bring in $40 million over the weekend, and I have to say, I can't wait to see that one, too.
It's not wide release yet, but Sing Sing. Yeah. Big, not 10 out of 10 on, it's unbelievable. It's half real, half not. And it's about Sing Sing, but it's about it's about humanity, Andrew, something I think you'd like.
I love humanity.
And the human condition. And I don't ever cry.
And you cried?
Yes.
I cry all the time,
Several
as you know.
times. Yeah,
usually during the show.
You do.
The Supreme Court has overturned a 1980s precedent known as the Chevron doctrine. That decision could actually undercut federal agencies, including the FDA. Joining us right now for more on this is former FDA Commissioner and CNBC contributor Dr. Scott Gottlieb. And Dr. Gottlieb, thank you for being here. I wanted to talk to you about this, not just in your role as the former FDA Commissioner, but also as someone who used to work at the American Enterprise Institute, which takes the view that big government's not always a great thing. And I just wonder how you are looking at this decision that was originally brought by fishermen in the Atlantic who were unhappy with having to pay for monitors who were watching over what they were hauling in. Why don't you talk through how you see all of this and what it means?
Right, and I'm still at the American Enterprise Institute. Look, I think a lot of conservatives viewed this as a way to constrain the administrative state, that regulatory agencies had expanded the scope of their authority into new areas that Congress hadn't clearly delineated. And now agencies aren't going to be able to do that. When you were a regulator, so when I was at FDA, if we issued rulemaking and we were interpreting the statute in areas of ambiguity to try to apply our regulatory oversight to new areas of supervision, new product areas, we generally, as long as we went through rulemaking, we generally felt that the courts would defer to us under Chevron doctrine. And that was a reason to go through the rulemaking process, so that deference would attach. Now that presumption no longer exists, and so you're going to have to go back to Congress in many cases, get explicit authority if you want to extend the agency's jurisdiction into a new product area. Now, with respect to FDA specifically, I would expect that the courts will still defer to FDA on fact-based decision-making with respect to the drug approval process or medical product review. Courts and Congress has given the agency broad grants of authority in those areas to make fact-based, science-based decisions. But when the agency is trying to delineate its regulatory supervision over new product areas, for example, laboratory-developed tests or certain food safety rules, I think those are the areas where the agency's authority now is going to be more ambiguous. They're going to be challenged. And Congress ultimately is going to have to come in and probably re-legislate some of these areas to make sure that the agency's jurisdiction and its authority in places where you want the agency to be regulating, where it's very clear.
Could you have gone after Juul the way you did and their marketing towards kids under this new ruling? Or this ruling being overturned?
It's quite possible. Right, so one of the rules that could very likely be challenged is the agency's efforts to try to regulate flavored vapes, for example. A lot of what we did when we went after Juul was taking enforcement actions under the existing statute and regulations, which I think was pretty ironclad. I think we were on firm ground, and we were challenged in courts, and we prevailed not under Chevron deference. But I think that have been some rules that have been promulgated in the intervening years, particularly around flavored tobacco products, where the agency could face a challenge. That would be one of the more immediate places I think you'll see some litigation now as a result of this decision. You know, you led at the top with the politics of this. It's interesting to just go back to 1984 when this doctrine was first established. It was actually conservatives that were fighting for it because they felt that the courts were second-guessing regulatory agencies. Remember, those regulatory agencies were under the control of a Republican president at the time, and they felt that the regulatory agencies should have more jurisdiction and not the courts. And so now you see the politics of this reversed, to your point.
Yeah. I was just reading, I didn't even realize Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch was in the majority deciding this. It was his mother, who was the former EP administrator, Ann Gorsuch, who actually made the decision that the Supreme Court upheld back in 1984, which is describing your point exactly, how it has changed flavors with them. I guess my question is, I've had other people who are former FDA officials saying, look, this could be very bad because it could mean that Congress basically has to sign off on every decision that they're making, could really slow things down, especially when you consider that Congress can't even do its own job on time, which is coming up with the budget. Are you concerned on that level? And you mentioned yourself that Congress may have to rewrite some of these rules. Do you see that happening? How long would that take, and how difficult of a job would that be to get through Congress?
Yeah, with respect to FDA, I think that there is a general view in Washington that they go through very careful rulemaking. The agency issues a lot of regulations. And if you look at a lot of FDA statute, Congress gives the agency broad grants of discretion by directing it to develop guidance in specific areas. So in areas where the Congress has explicitly said, we want you to develop a guidance to delineate what your regulatory oversight is going to be in this general area, I think if you read the recent Supreme Court decision, those would be perceived as general grants of authority back to the agency. And so I think you're going to see more of that in statute. I wouldn't be worried about the agency's decision-making around scientific matters, product review decisions. I think it's going to be in areas where the agency has stepped in to regulate new areas of technology where Congress didn't explicitly direct the agency to do that. And so those aren't very common. They do exist. Laboratory-developed tests, as I mentioned, is one of the things that I would expect to be challenged quite immediately under this Supreme Court decision. But as far as the day in, day out of the agency's scientific decision-making, I wouldn't expect those to be subject to challenges. Another broad area where I think you're going to see more challenges is around the grants of exclusivity. The FDA makes a lot of determinations about what exclusivity periods different products are entitled to. Those are already the subject of a lot of litigation. I think under this new recent Supreme Court ruling, you're going to see more challenges there.
All right, Dr. Gottlieb, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And that is Squawk Pod for today, this Monday. Thanks for starting your week with us. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern, or get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears when you follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Follow wherever you're listening now. We'll meet you back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.